Hi all, I welcome you all to the today's free training session of Network Configuration Manager. Today's the part 2 of the free training session, and we'll be covering the topics of conflicts, compliance, role-based access control, and reports. I'm Nikhil Frederick, Product Expert Network Configuration Manager, and I'll be your trainer for this free training session. So this is the agenda for today's session. We'll be covering conflicts and their uses, compliance, role-based access control, schedules, reports, and finally about the various integrations. So let's start with our first topic, conflicts. So what are conflicts? Conflicts are executable configuration templates or script templates which can be used to push commands to multiple devices for bulk execution or for troubleshooting purposes. So what exactly are these conflicts used for? So they are mainly used for troubleshooting of faulty devices, pushing new configurations or changing configurations of multiple devices at once. So let's say, for example, a user wants to enable SNMP version 3 or configure SNMP version 3 to certain number of devices. So without a tool, the user cannot be logging into PuTTY or Telnet each time to a device to configure the SNMP version 3. It will be very hectic and near to impossible in a large network infrastructure with many devices. So what the user can do is that instead he can use these conflicts and they can push the enable SNMP v3 command to any number of devices with a single click. So this saves a lot of time as well as this reduce the hectic manual work of network admins. So now how do we add these conflicts in Network Configuration Manager? There are three execution modes present through which we add and execute conflicts, which are script execution mode, advanced script execution mode, and file transfer mode. Upcoming slides, we look in detail at these three execution one by one, starting with script execution mode. So here commands are executed in the sequential order for devices present. It is used for simple commands such as to enable or disable SNMP in number of devices or for importing of banners. So this is an example of a script execution mode command. As you can see on to your left in black is the PuTTY and on the right is the configured content area of Network Configuration Manager. So let me show you this in the UI, how it works in the UI of Network Configuration Manager. So this is the UI of Network Configuration Manager. Go to conflicts, click on conflicts. So as you can see here, Network Configuration Manager supports both CLI conflicts as well as REST conflicts. In REST conflicts, we support vendors like Palo Alto, PAN OS, Fortinet, Aruba, etc. We are working on providing support for more vendors in the future. So moving on to CLI conflicts, let us first look at how you can add conflicts from scratch. Then we look at the examples of the three execution modes one by one. To add conflicts from scratch, click on the plus symbol provided over here. You can provide the name for the particular conflict. You can select the execution mode, any one of the execution modes. You can select the vendor, which vendor you need, whether it's all vendors in Network Configuration Manager or any particular vendor of your choice. You can provide the description for what purpose this conflict is executed. You can provide the conflict content over here. You can check this box if you want Network Configuration Manager to perform backup before and after this template's execution, and click on save. After clicking on save, your conflict will be saved and it will be shown as seen here. From this screen, you can choose to execute it immediately, schedule it at your own time, or you can also delete it if it is not required. So now let me show you an example of script execution mode. Example. So let me show an example where we are going to enable SNMP version 1 and version 2 for Cisco devices. So as you can see here, the name is provided. The execution mode is selected as script execution mode. The vendor is selected as Cisco because for Cisco devices only we are going to enable the SNMP. And here the conflict content is provided. That is the read-only community and read-write community is provided. And the conflict content is provided over here, as you can see. And this particular box is checked, which means Network Configuration Manager will perform backup before and after the execution of this particular template. And click on save. So after clicking on save, as I mentioned before, from this screen, you can choose to execute, schedule, or delete. So let me show you the option to execute. Just click on execute. You can see over here the configlet name is provided, the execution mode is given, the vendor is given. So you can check whether this is the correct details which you have given during the creation of the configlet. Here, template variables, you can choose whether same value for all devices or different value for each device. This I'll explain in detail in the upcoming slide. And here you can choose the devices, whether it should be a device group, any device group from Network Configuration Manager, or any particular device group like Cisco router group or Cisco switch group. Or if device group is not your choice, you can select individual devices as well. So as you can see here, there are a lot of individual devices present over here. You can just click and press the right arrow. And for these particular devices alone, this configlet will be executed. Since we have given vendor as Cisco, there is also Cisco devices tab over here. So you can also click on this tab and you can select whichever Cisco devices you require, and you can click on execute. So as soon as you click on execute, this particular configlet for the selected devices will be executed immediately. And for these devices, the SNMP will be enabled. This is an example of script execution mode command. Next is the advanced script execution mode. So there are certain criteria for which advanced script execution mode is used, such as for prompt changes after a command execution, such as for user confirmation commands, which includes yes or no commands, to stop command execution in case of error in the middle, to change execution flow, etc. This particular advanced script execution mode can be used. So this is an example of advanced script execution mode command. As you can see, on the left is the telnet, and on the right is the configlet content of Network Configuration Manager's UI. So let me show you this let me show you an example in the UI. So here's an example of an advanced script execution mode where we are going to update the host name of all the Cisco devices present in Network Configuration Manager. So here you can see the name is provided, the execution mode is selected as advanced script execution mode, and the vendor is selected as Cisco because only for Cisco devices we are going to utilize this particular configlet. Here the description is provided to update the host name for Cisco devices, and here the configlet content is provided. As you can see over here, the commands are provided in a sequential order of 1 to 3, and these commands will be executed in the same order. You can check on this box if you require backup, and you can click on save. After clicking on save, the same 3 operations you can do from the screen. You can choose to execute it, schedule, or delete. Last time I showed you the example of executing the configlet immediately. This time I'll show you the schedule option. So just click on schedule. You can provide a schedule name, choose the schedule type as configlets. It will be already selected. If not, you can select it as configlets. Here you can choose the vendor, which is Cisco. And here you can select the configlet, whichever configlet you have created, and see whether the execution mode is given correctly. And you can check on this box if you want Network Configuration Manager to perform backup. And here you can select the report file type, whether it should be PDF, CSV, TXT, and you can choose the schedule option to get this particular configlet schedule. So I'll cover this schedule functionality in detail in the upcoming slides. This is the configlet's workflow. As seen in the before example, the commands will be executed in the sequential order. So this particular thing is supported only in the advanced script execution configlet's for Network Configuration Manager, where you can provide the sequence, the conditions such as success, failure, etc. Let me show you an example of that. So this is an example where we are going to upgrade the Cisco iOS firmware. So here you can see in the configlet content area, there are a lot of sequential lines present over here. And there is also a condition given over here, as well as whether it should be a success and what happens if it is a failure. So how this works is that once it is executed in the sequential order, if the condition is satisfied, it will move on to the next sequence, that is 6, 7, 8, 9, and it will finally move on to the exit. Otherwise, if it is a failure, it will not move on to the next sequence, and the particular configlet content will end over there. So this is an example of the workflow of Network Configuration Manager, which is particularly supported in advanced script execution mode. Final one is the file transfer mode. So here an entire configuration, whether it can be a running configuration or a startup configuration or both of the configurations that can be pushed to selected devices at once. You can copy an entire configuration and paste it in the configured content area, and you can just execute it. Let me show you this in the UI. So here is an example of file transfer for Cisco devices where an entire configuration has been pasted over in the configured content area. You can just click on save and you can choose to exit. You can choose to execute it, schedule, or delete it from here. So this is an example of file transfer mode. Next is the configured execution. As mentioned before, you would have come across this template variable selection where you need to select whether same value for all devices or different value for each device. So why this feature is provided is that because there are some devices which will require different details such as interface ranges, host name, etc. So in that cases, you can use this option where different values will be executed to different devices in your network configuration manager. So let me show you this in the UI. So let me take you to the same example where we have executed the enable SNMP version 1 and 2 for Cisco devices. So as you can see here, we have provided the read-only community as well as the read-write community over here. So once this particular configlet is saved and if during execution, here you can provide the template variable as same value for all devices. If all the devices contain same value, you can provide the same read-only community and the same read-write community over here, and it will be executed for all the devices. Suppose there is change for different devices, you can choose this option where you will need to upload a file in a particular format. You can upload the file in this particular format and you can just click on preview and you can execute it. So these particular details which you have given will be executed in this particular config. This option over here, that is use first row value for all, is present because the value which you have given in the first row for this particular in this particular file will get executed for all the devices. So here is an example of that in this particular presentation. So on the left is a different value for each device where you can see there are different host names on the left hand side, but on the right side you can see that the host name 4, host name 2, the host name differs. So this is an example of different value for each device. And on the right side I've provided the different value for each device where first row values box is checked. So when you check that, as you can see for different host names, the particular value which is given as the first one, that is the host name host1.ex, it will be executed for all the devices. So this is config execution. Next is two-factor configured execution, which we have recently developed in Network Configuration Manager. So if you have enabled two-factor authentication, you will receive a TOTP in the Authenticator app. So only after you enter a TOTP, you can execute the configured. So this will be useful for security authentication. So if you have enabled two-factor, then only this will be shown to you. So that is all about configlets in Network Configuration Manager. So if you have any doubts regarding today's session, you can raise your questions in the chat panel. We have a separate panelist to answer all your questions. Also, if you have joined late, you do not need to worry, as this presentation and the recording will be sent to your email IDs in a couple of days' time. So let's move on to our second topic of the session, which is compliance. So why do you need a compliance, or why do you have to be compliant to a certain policy? Because it is necessary, because you can avoid any security vulnerabilities or loopholes to your network environment. Compliance is also mandatory, and not following will lead to some of the legal consequences. So some of the default policies that are supported in Network Configuration Manager includes SIS benchmarks, SOX, HIPAA, and PCI DSS. You can also create your own policies depending upon your requirement. So for creating a custom policy, first you need to create a custom rule. Then group those rules into rule groups, and then those rule groups are associated as policies. So after a policy is created and applied to devices, NCM will run a compliance check to check if the policy is given or mandated with the devices. If not, a violation is triggered. There are two ways to create a custom rule. Either you can clone an existing rule or add one from scratch. There are three criteria to add a compliance rule from scratch. That is simple criteria, advanced criteria, and advanced custom criteria. In the upcoming slides, we'll look into detail about these three criteria. So let's start with the simple criteria. So here, during NCM's compliance check, you can select either what all should contain, what all shouldn't contain, whether it should be an exact set or not an exact set in the configuration of the devices. You can select the number of times it must be present, whether it should be any number of times or any particular time it should be present in the configuration of a device. So let me show you this in the UI. We have a separate tab for compliance. Just click on compliance. So as you can see over here, these are the policies which are available right now in Network Configuration Manager. So the policies which are provided as a default, as well as the policies which you create from scratch, will be shown over here. From here, you can see the violation, number of compliant devices, number of violation, the data not available. You can also run compliance check from here. So let me show you how we can create rules from scratch. To do that, go to rules. Here you can see there are a lot of rules present over here. To create a new one, just click on plus symbol over here. You can select any of the criteria which you want, whether simple, advanced, or advanced custom. And you can provide the condition over here and the line over here. And you can associate this particular rule to a rule group and proceed with the policy. So this will be better understood if I show you an example of each of these criteria. So let me show an example of simple criteria. So here is an example of simple criteria rule where no public community should be present. So here we have provided the condition as should not contain any line, and here it is given as any number of times. And here the SNMP community public R1, community public RW we have provided over here in this particular area. So how it works is that during compliance check, NCM will check whether these two lines are present in the configuration of the devices which you have associated this rule to. So if these two lines are present, it means the rule is in violation and you need to remediate the rule to achieve compliance. Otherwise, this particular rule, if it is satisfied, that means the rule is compliant, and you can just leave it as it is. So you can click on next. So here you can provide the rule name, short description for what purpose this rule is created, and here you can select the violation severity. So if at all this rule becomes a violation, what will be the severity of it, whether it should be a critical, major, or a warning severity. So you can select any of the severity according to your choice, and from here you can select the remediation configlet. As you can see over here, we have created a no SNMP public remediation configlet. So as you know, configurets are script templates. So whenever this rule becomes violated, you can utilize this remediation configlet anytime, and you can just click on execute to remediate this particular rule violation. So it will be always good to create a remediation configlet while creating a rule from scratch. And click on save. After clicking on save, your rule will be saved and it will be shown as seen here. So the next step is to associate these rules to the required rule group. So what you can do is that you can just select on the particular group, and you can select here associate to rule groups, and here you can see the available rules over here. So the rule which you have selected is shown on the right side. If you want any other rules to be selected, you can just select from here like this, and you can drag and drop it to the right side. And here you can select the rule groups for which this particular three rules need to be assigned to, and click on save. After clicking on save, these three rules will be associated to this rule group. So this is an example of a simple criteria compliance. And the next one is the advanced criteria. So here we can provide the details such as should contain, should not contain, along with the regular expression pattern. So here we have the option to provide and or function as well. So you can create multiple criterias in one particular rule. So here, let me show you this in the UI. So here is an example of an advanced criteria compliance rule. As you can see here, the condition is set as should not contain this particular pattern. And there is another line where it is given as or should contain this particular pattern, and this particular pattern it should contain, and or this should. So how this works is that NCM during the compliance check, it will check whether this particular pattern is present in the configuration file or not. So if it is not contained, then it will move on to the next one, which it needs to satisfy this particular AND operation over here should contain this. So if both are satisfied, that means, and both of these and this AND line should contain only one time in the configuration. So if it exceeds more than one time also, this rule will be violated. So once these two conditions are satisfied, then NCM will move on to the NCM will make the test as whether it's compliant or not. You can click on next, and you can give the rule name, a short description, the violation severity over here, and here you can select the remediation configurate which you have created for this particular rule, and I can click on save. And finally, you can associate it to the rule groups as I have shown before. So this is an example of an advanced criteria rule. Next is the advanced custom criteria. So it is basically a mixture of both simple criteria and advanced criteria, as well as here we provide the option of single block criteria as well as multi-block criteria, along with the and or function, the rejects pattern function, and the number of times it must be present. So let me show you this in the UI. So as you can see here, this is an example of an advanced custom criteria thing. So we have given two options right now. One is single block criteria, another one is multi-line block. So as you can see here, let me show you this in the presentation. So let's take this picture as an example for this particular compliance flow. So as you can see here, this particular configuration block starts with interface and ends with exclamatory mark. So what NCM, we can provide it over here, that configuration block start as interface, configuration block end is exclamatory mark, and here the additional block criteria it's given us should not contain shutdown. So what is this shutdown exactly? So in a network environment, there are certain devices which will be in shutdown mode. So it is not necessary to run compliance check on these devices. So hence, to avoid this process, you can provide this option in advanced custom criteria in the additional block criteria, and you can move on to the next pattern. So how this works is that NCM will check whether the configuration block is starting from interface and it ends with exclamatory mark. So this condition is satisfied, and it will move on to the next criteria where it will check whether the line contains shutdown word in the configuration. So as you can see here, shutdown word is present. So what this means is that the particular device is in shutdown mode, and it will move on to the next device. If this particular shutdown mode is not present, that means the router or the switch or the device is in running mode, and it will move on to the next condition here, whether it will check whether this particular description /s, this particular pattern is present in the configuration or not. Once all of this is satisfied, then only it will be then only the rule will be compliant. Otherwise, it will throw a violation. And click on next. You can provide the name, the severity, as well as the remediation configurate from here, and click on save. So this is about the remediation configurate. So from here, let me show you how we can associate to rule groups. I've already shown it to you. And if you want to create a rule group from scratch, you can do so by clicking on the plus symbol over here. You can provide the rule group name, the description, and you can select whichever rules you have created, and you can just push it to this side, and you can click on save. So for this particular rule group you created, these two rules will be associated. So also the next step is to associate these rule groups into policies. So how you can do is that, so if you have created these two rule groups, you can just click on this symbol over here, and you can create associate to policies. So here you can you can select the rule groups whichever you require, and here are the policies that are present in Network Configuration Manager. So you can just select whichever policies you need these rule groups to be associated, and you can click on save. After clicking on save, these particular rules which are created will be associated to the rule group, and those rule groups will be associated to the policies. So as soon as you click on save, the next time when NCM runs the policy compliance check of the particular policy, it will run with the rules, and it will run with the rules which you have created or associated to the policy. So if you want to create a policy from scratch, what you can do is that you can click plus symbol over here. You can provide the policy name and the description. You can select the configuration type, whether it is running or startup. And here you can select the policy violation criteria, whether any rule in this policy is violated, or only if a critical or major rule in this policy is violated. So what will be the criteria for this compliance policy which you're creating? You can choose it from here. And here there are a lot of rule groups which are shown. So you can just select any of the rule groups which you require for this particular policy, and you can click on save. So from this screen, you can select the available devices or device groups. So here you can suppose if you want to create a if you want to associate a certain devices this particular compliance rule, compliance policy, so you can just select whichever devices you require and you click on save. So you can check on this box if you want NCM to run a compliance check operation immediately after creating of this policy. So what it will do is that NCM will run the compliance check to for the devices selected, and it will tell whether the devices are compliant or not compliant. So this is about the creation of custom rules and policies in Network Configuration Manager for compliance. Next is the remediation configlet. So you can create a remediation configlet to solve any non-compliance issues. So you can assign these remediation configurats while creating a rule itself. And while if at all a rule is violated, you can just click on execute, and you can just remediate the particular rule violation immediately. So as I mentioned before, let me show you an example. So as you can see over here, for this no public community, there is a remediation template created, which has shown before. That is no SNMP public. So here you can see that there are 4 devices that are in violation of this particular rule. So what you can do is that you can just click on this particular template, and you can see the devices which are non-compliant will be shown over here, and you can just click on execute. After clicking on execute, for these 4 devices which are not compliant to this particular rule, the remediation template will work, and these devices will also become compliant immediately. So that is why always it is a best practice to create a remediation template while creating the rule, so that whenever a rule violation occurs, you can just execute it from here anytime you want. So this is about the remediation configlet. Next is the compliance report. So here compliance reports provides an in-depth information about what all devices are compliant and non-compliant, along with the date and time of last it was checked. So let me show you. So here in the reports, click on compliance report. So here you can see a pie chart representing how many devices are with violation, how many devices are compliant, and how many devices data are not available. So what it does is that it will separate the violation devices and compliant devices as separate tabular columns for better understanding. So here you can see the violation devices present over here, and how many are critical, major, warning, and how many are compliant, and along with when it was last checked. So you can further drill down, and you can see which policy has been not compliant and how many devices are not compliant for that particular devices. So after further drilling down, you can see the device policy violations over here. So if any remediation template is created, it will show over here, and you can just click on that particular remediation template, and you can remediate this particular rule violations. Also, I wanted to tell you that this particular report can be exported as PDF, CSV, Excel, or it can also be sent via email as well. So the next topic of today's session is role-based access control. So what is this role-based access control? So basically, let's say in your network team, you have a senior admin as well as operators. Under a senior admin, there'll be some operators working. So you can assign specific roles to them or specific devices to them. only the role, that is if you're giving operator, that will be the scope of the particular user, and only the devices which you give them will be accessible by that particular user. Others will be out of access completely. So if at all they make any changes to the assigned devices, the admin will receive notifications immediately. Then the admins can choose to accept or reject the change accordingly. So let me show you a small representation of how role-based access control works. So we have an operator over here. He makes some changes to a configuration file, and that particular configuration and that particular notification of the change and all the details will be immediately sent to the admin, and the admin can choose to approve or reject the change from his end, and the approved or rejected notification will be sent to the operator immediately. So this is the cycle of how role-based access control works in Network Configuration Manager. So let me show you this in the UI. Go to settings, user management. So as you can see here, these are the operators or users that are present in Network Configuration Manager, and the details are shown over here. To create a new user, you can just click on add user over here. You can provide the role as operator, username as let me take it as Sam, the email ID for the particular person, the password, and the retype password. So let me show you that. So here, after creating, you can see that in the next screen, you can choose to provide the devices. That is, if you want to give him specific devices, or you can select any of the specific device group. Suppose if I give him only Cisco router group over here, only the Cisco router group will be accessible to this particular operator. No other devices will be accessible to him. You can click on save. So after clicking on save, from here you can choose to delete the user as well if he has left the organization, or if he has left the team. So let me show you if how he makes the changes, and if the change is made, how the admin will receive a notification. So let me log out from my admin system, and let me log in as Sam. Just a minute. So I've logged in as Sam right now. So as you can see here, I've given him the Cisco router group access. So here you can see only the Cisco router group is seen for him in the inventory. No other devices or device groups are seen for him. So what he can do is that suppose if he wants to make a change for this particular device, what he can, let me show you an example. So he's just deleting some lines. He's adding some lines over here, and if he clicks on save and upload, it will show that you do not have upload permission. Click upload to place your request to the administrator. So you can select whether it's startup or running, and you can click on upload. So as soon as he clicks on upload, the upload request will be sent to the administrator immediately. So let me show you that. So here in the bell icon over here, you can click and you can see that Sam has requested for an upload, and you can see the device for which he has done the changes. And here, as soon as you click on show draft, you can see the 2 lines which you have modified. So as you can see here, these 2 lines were modified by me. So here it is shown, it is modified, and the admin can look over it in detail, and from here you can choose to approve or reject the change. Or suppose if the particular change is valid, the admin also can choose to execute it from here by himself. This is about role-based access control in Network Configuration Manager. Next is tags. So tags are similar to hashtags. So you can create a particular tag for a location, and you can assign certain devices, schedules, configurates, compliance users for that particular location. So say, for example, you have a location in Los Angeles, and you can create a tag called Los Angeles, and you can provide the devices, devices, users, and etc. So the users for which this particular tag is given, only the Los Angeles devices will be accessible to those particular users. So let me show you this in the UI. Go to settings, click on tags. here you can see Los Angeles tag has been created, and as you can see, these 4 devices are present under this particular tag. There are also conflicts created, schedule compliance policies for this particular tag, change notifications created in this tag, and all users that are present completely that are present in this particular tag you can view from here. So how this works is that during an creation of a user in this particular network configuration manager, you can assign a tag. So during the association of tag, you can select the Los Angeles tag so that only these particular devices will be accessible to you. So let me show you that. So here in this screen, rather than providing a specific device or device group, you can select tag from here, and you can select the tag as Los Angeles, and you can just click on save. So after clicking on save, this particular devices which are present in this particular tag only will be accessed by the user. So this is about tags. Next is custom columns. So in a network configuration manager, up to 3 custom columns can be created. So let me show you that in the here. Go to settings, device management, and click on custom column. So here you can create the columns such as location, the customer, or whichever column you require, and click on update. After clicking on update, you can check on any of the devices, and you can see that here location is given, customers provided, and the third custom column will be shown over here. This is about custom columns. Next is schedules. So NCM provides different types of scheduling options for different task categories, such as for configuration backups, for report generation, for running compliance check, for config-led execution, for device discovery, to keep startup and running configuration in sync, and finally for PCI review. So this option is provided for certain tasks that require to be done on a daily basis, weekly basis, or monthly basis. The user cannot be remembering each and every task. So by utilizing the schedule feature, you can just provide the date and time, and network configuration manager will take care of the rest. So let me show you this in the UI. Go to config automation, click on schedule. So as you, from here, click on the plus symbol provided over here. And here you can see the schedule name. The schedule type is selected as configuration backup for now. You can select whichever type you require. Here you can select the device group or individual devices, whichever you prefer. And here you can select the report notification option as send email or save the report. So what is the difference is that if you click on send email, you need to provide the email addresses separated by comma over here and the email subject. So what happens is that as soon as this scheduling operation is completed, network configuration manager will immediately send the report via email to the email addresses mentioned over here, so that you can keep track of the execution even during non-business hours. So if you do not require to be disturbed by this particular email, you can select the option as save report and you can proceed. So what happens is that it will not send any email notification. Instead, it will save the report so that next time you log into the configuration manager, you can view the report of the particular execution. So here is the options. So we have around 5 different options to schedule. One is the hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, and once. So based on your requirements, you can just select whichever option you require, and network configuration manager will take care of the operation at the particular time. So this is about schedule. Next is configuration search. So why this configuration search is required is that it can be used to locate a particular string, word, or anything in a configuration file. So let's say if you have a large configuration file of more than 1,000 lines in it, the user cannot be scrolling and searching for each and every 1,000 lines for a particular keyword. So instead, the user can use this configuration search option and find anything instantly. So let me show you that. From the inventory, you can see over here, click on this icon with the magnifying glass on it, and here you can provide any search you want. Click on advanced. You can provide the conditions such as contains, not contains, line starts with, line ends with, and they can provide any particular line like enable, or this particular whichever line you want, and you can click on search. So as soon as you click on search, Network Configuration Manager will search whether this particular keyword or particular pattern is present in any of the configuration of the Network Configuration Manager. If it is present, it will list it over here. This is about configuration search. Next is exclude criteria. So what is this exclude criteria? So with this feature, you can tell NCM to exclude certain things from being considered as change and triggering an alarm for it. For example, if you don't want clock time to be considered as a change, or if you don't want a particular date to be present in the configuration file as a change, you can provide that criteria for the particular device. And the next time onwards, Network Configuration Manager will not show the clock time as well as the timestamp as a change in the configuration file. So this will help you with some of the annoying notifications which you receive for multiple changes that have been carried out. So to eradicate those annoying notifications, you can just provide this criteria and you can proceed with the required changes that you need to see. So let me show you that. Go to config automation, click on exclude criteria. So in Network Configuration Manager, we support two criteria. One is line exclude criteria, another one is the block exclude criteria. So here the block exclude, let me in the line exclude, let me show you an example where clock time is created. So as you can see, for this particular device type, the criteria is given as clock time, and these two supported templates are provided over here, and you can click on save. As soon as you click on save, for this particular device, the clock time will not be considered as change, and it will not be shown in the configuration changes of the devices, the different versions which you see. Suppose if you are enabling this option from version 400, from version 401, the particular clock time will not be shown as change in the configuration of the device. So this is an example of exclude criteria, that is line exclude. In block exclude, let me show you an example. So here you can provide the template, and you can provide the configuration block start as well as the configuration block in. So this particular block, the block start and the block in, will be considered as an exclude criteria, and Network Configuration Manager will not consider particular block as change the next time any change happens to this particular block. You can also provide an additional block criteria where they can select should contain or should not contain, and you can provide the details over here and click on save. So this is all about exclude criteria in Network Configuration Manager. Next is alarms. So alarms are used to notify important updates and failures immediately to users. So let me show you this in the UI for better understanding. We have separate alarms tab. As you can see here, there are a lot of active alarms present over here. So as you can see here, there are about 1.8K alarms that are currently in Network Configuration Manager. So these alarms are active for device configuration, backup failure, firmware vulnerability detection, and such. This alarm will pop out immediately. So from here, you can choose what are alarms are present, what are the events that you have created that are available in Network Configuration Manager. You can see all the details from here. So this is basically about alarms. So next is show commands feature. So instead of typing commands manually by connecting to a terminal and executing them, you can save it as a template by using the show commands feature in Network Configuration Manager and execute it from here itself. So let me show you how this works. Go to settings, device management, and click on show commands. So as you can see, these are the show commands that are created. To create a new one, click on add. You can provide the command alias over here, like show version or something. The command over here, the vendor for which it is used, and you click on save. As soon as you click on save, let me show you how this works. The inventory, click on this device, click on actions, execute, show command. So here you can see that the show version command is created, and it will show the content of the particular show command. So instead of a separate telnet, it will show in this UI of Network Configuration Manager itself. So it's not only created for show version, there are other commands also which are created, such as show interfaces, show logging, show IP traffic, etc. So you can select whichever command you want, and Network Configuration Manager will immediately show that particular command over here. You can also choose to export this particular command whenever you require. So this is about show commands in NCM. Next, we have reports. So Network Configuration Manager provides different kinds of reports for various audit purposes. So some of the reports include network reports, configuration reports, vulnerability and user reports, and other reports. So let me show you this in the UI. Go to reports. As you can see here, in under network reports there are certain reports, and in configuration reports there are multiple reports, and vulnerability and user reports. Vulnerabilities related to firmware vulnerability, network configuration manager, we have CVEID report, exposed devices report, etc. And in the other reports we have the end of life and the end of sale details report, as well as the compliance report over here. So let me show an example of hardware inventory report. So as you can see here, it provides complete details of the hardware of the particular device, that is 192.168.49.101. For this particular IP address, you can see the hardware details like the series, model, the OS type, the versions present, the chassis number, and everything. So here you can provide the filter whether you're required to view it for all the device groups or any particular device groups of your choice, or I can also export the particular report to PDF, CSV, to Excel, or email the report. So let me show an example of CVEID report as well. So here we provide all the details of the firmware vulnerabilities as mentioned in the uh, previous time. So here you get the details of CVEIDs, the base code, device count for how many devices this particular vulnerability is affected. You also get the patch links provided over here. You can click on it and you can provide the patch links and etc. So this is about reports and network configuration manager. Next is the UI of Network Configuration Manager. So Network Configuration Manager provides a top-notch informative dashboard which provides a bird's eye view of all the operations running currently in NCM. This particular dashboard is in widget type and it is completely customizable. So let me show you that. Click on dashboard. As you can see here, these are the currently running operations present in Network Configuration Manager. You can have bird's eye view of all the operations, and you can choose to drag and drop the particular widget according to your choice and click on save. As soon as you click on save, this particular widget, however you arranged it, it will be shown over here. So it's completely dynamic. This is the details of Network Configuration Manager. Next is we have integrations. So Network Configuration Manager not only supports in-house integrations, it also supports many third-party integrations as well. So first, let us see about the integration which are supported, third-party integrations which are supported, which include Password Manager Pro, which is a credential vault software. So if there are a lot of devices in a network environment, the user cannot be remembering credentials for every device. Instead, they can use Password Manager Pro and save the credentials in them. So when required, they can retrieve them instantaneously. So that's the credential vault. We have some ticketing softwares that include Service Desk Plus, Service Desk Plus Cloud Service Now, as well as PagerDuty. So Service Now is an incident logging software. Service Desk Plus is a ticketing software. So whenever configuration failure, backup failure, or a configuration upload request occurs, it will fall as a ticket in Service Desk Plus, and the user can take care of the request. So this is about the third-party integrations that are supported in Network Configuration Manager. Next, we look at the authentications that are supported in Network Configuration Manager. The first one is the radius authentication, which is known as the remote authentication dial-in user service, which is a client-server protocol. So you can also utilize this radius authentication to log into Network Configuration Manager. The next one is the AD authentication. So AD, it allows you to authenticate users from within NCM without using an external third-party identity management tool. So the AD users can utilize this particular authentication and they can log in via this. Next is the SAML authentication, which is the security assertion markup language, which is an XML-based standard, exchanges authentication credentials between a service provider and an identity provider. So it eliminates the need for multiple passwords. So if you want a single sign-on, that is SSO functionality, so you can utilize this SAML feature for logging into Network Configuration Manager. Next is the two-factor authentication. So if you enable two-factor authentication, you will receive a TOTP in the Authenticator app, and only if you provide the TOTP, you will get to log into Network Configuration Manager successfully. So let me show you this. Go to settings, authentication. So here you can see the radius server authentication provided over here. the AD authentication, SAML authentication over here, and finally the two-factor authentication. So you can just click on enable two-factor authentication, and you can provide the allow the browser to be trusted for these many days option as well. So you can click on save. Suppose if you don't have an authenticator app, you can click on email option, and the email that you have configured for the network configuration manager, in that particular email you will receive a TOTP or the OTP, and you can use that to log into network configuration manager. So this is about the authentication in network configuration manager. Next, we look at how network configuration manager can be added as an add-on to different ME products. So the first one is Op Manager. So network Op Manager is nothing but a comprehensive network monitoring tool. So if you are already an user of network Op Manager, you can just utilize network configuration manager as an add-on to Op Manager, so that you can have the double advantage in the same UI by performing monitoring as well as managing configurations using NCM. Next is the NetFlow Analyzer. So in the similar way, NetFlow Analyzer is a bandwidth and traffic management tool. If you are a customer of NetFlow Analyzer, you can utilize Network Configuration Manager as an add-on to NetFlow Analyzer. And here also you get the double advantage of performing bandwidth monitoring, traffic analysis, as well as managing your critical configurations in real time. There will not be any UI change. You also get the same UI advantage as well. Thank you all. We'll be ending the session now. Hope the session was useful to you. See you all in another season of Network Configuration Manager free training series. Thank you.